Hi, everyone. Welcome to the July API, Layer 7 API Security Office Hours. And I almost said August. I can't believe we're at the end of July already. Anyway, I wanted to welcome everyone to the call today. Things are going to be a little bit different today, so I wanted to make sure you're aware of it. Instead of you are on mute currently, and previously we had left you on mute all the way through the presentation, and if you had questions, you could just type it in. But what we've decided to do is we'd like for it to be a little more interactive. So I am going to unmute you guys, which really just means I'm giving you the ability to unmute yourselves. So there's a setting where you will be able to unmute yourselves, ask questions during the presentation to make it more interactive. Now, that does not mean that if you choose and you prefer to use the type it in, you know, the taskbar there to go in the panel to go in and type your questions, you can. So it's totally up to you. It's however you feel comfortable, right? So I just want to make sure you knew that. And then one more quick thing before I turn it over to John. I wanted to make sure you all were aware that we have an upcoming customer appreciation event in Toronto, Canada, September 16th. What that means is if you're our customer and you're in around that Toronto area and you think you may want to join us, feel free, right? There's a registration link and I'm going to put that in the chat. And we would love for you to join us. It's going to be, it really is just dinner in the evening. It's dinner and a fun comedy show at Second City. So those of you who are familiar in the Toronto area, I'm sure you're familiar with that venue. I think it's pretty popular. So we love to have you there for dinner. Join us for dinner, drinks, and then afterwards, the comedy show that we have already purchased. We will purchase tickets for you. So everything is complimentary, including a few drinks. If you drink, right? Or, if you just prefer soda, tea, etc., that's fine too. But anyway, we would love to see you there. And I'm going to put the registration link in the chat. If you have questions, though, really about anything, always feel free to reach out to me. Pamela Deason, so pamela.deason@broadcom.com. And now I'm going to be quiet and turn it over to John.
Thanks, Pam. And anyone who hasn't been to Second City, highly recommend it. I've been to the one in Chicago, and it's a lot of fun. So. Like Pam mentioned, my name is Jon Schendt. I am the founder of Vista Ascent Solutions. We're a Broadcom Expert Advantage partner. And this is kind of a recap and update to a September 2024 office hours, where we talked a little bit about how to enable OpenTelemetry and some of the capabilities and insights and ultimately intelligence that you can derive from your APIs. So there's a lot of new information and there's a lot of new capabilities, and so we all thought it would be a good idea to update everyone on what's going on. So just a brief link, and we'll keep this out, and I didn't make it nice and pretty because anyone who is watching this video can then easily reference the old video, but this is the video to our complete September 2024 office hours presentation. It's on the Layer 7 YouTube channel. But now we'll kind of get into a brief recap of that, only 5 minutes or so, and then we'll talk about some of the new stuff. So as a brief recap, OpenTelemetry is an open source observability framework. Essentially what that means is everyone got sick of doing the same thing over and over, exposing data, exposing metrics about what's going on in their applications. And so I believe this was a combination of a couple different companies got together and created a protocol. And so that protocol is OTEL. We'll talk about that next slide, but through that protocol, they derived a framework, and that's got a standard set of tools and unified processes, things like that. So that specification allows us to, again, transmit and receive information about our applications, about our servers. It really opens up the aperture on what can be communicated, and again, removing the silos and removing some of those stovepipe tools and processes that were kind of required. In the past, you needed to have a monitoring or an observability framework for each application. And so you could have 5 or 6 different tools that were all trying to essentially send the same thing. That caused quite a bit of distress and sometimes loss of intelligence on how your entire ecosystem or infrastructure is doing, because you had to constantly go between different formats or different applications. So again, OpenTelemetry has that protocol. It's OTLP, OpenTelemetry Protocol. And what that really means is that all of that data becomes standardized. So there's a transformation that takes place. You have to, the application has to be able to speak that OTEL language or speak that OTLP protocol. And once the data is in the correct format, it will send that to a collector, which then sends out to, can either be aggregated or binned into a database for visualization frameworks. But then you've got all that data and it's normalized. It's transformed in a way that anyone or everything can read that format. So Layer7 is certainly leaning forward on this capability. This is something that is integrated out of the box. So if without including any other agents or any other hardware, you can enable OpenTelemetry without any other third-party software. The only thing you will need is an OpenTelemetry collector, something that can house that data, something that can process that data. So for this, we've been using Elastic. That's the stack that works best for us and for our clients. But I've definitely seen this used with other visualization platforms, other database solutions, which really does speak to the openness and the availability of OpenTelemetry.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have one person, and I just want to make sure it's not a widespread problem that's saying they can't see slides. If there's others that are not seeing slides, would you please come off mute and let us know?
It's just me. My colleagues can see. I can't. I'm just in a black screen.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
I need to make sure it wasn't.
I didn't want to interrupt. I want to check first with others as well. I've checked with others, and they say they can see it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so I can send you these slides too. I'll make sure you can.
No problem. I might join again.
Okay. It's still the recap from September, and I remember you were there at that one too. So, so moving forward, this is again, this is right from our configuration. This is how to enable OpenTelemetry on the gateway. Again, this is purely native. There is no extra bits or pieces that need to be enabled. There are OpenTelemetry agents, and since our Layer7 application is running as a JVM, there is a Java agent that allows you to get a little bit more information from OpenTelemetry. But right out of the box, we have the ability to enable all of this stuff. Again, the top part here is done through system.properties, which, if anyone's familiar with the VM install, or I think it can still be installed as a tarball or RPM. This is where the path would be to set those values. And most of these values are defaulted as the value that you see on the page. But we wanted to, again, kind of show a little bit more under the hood on what's going on. So just going down the list real quick, the OTEL service name is what you will see in your visualization framework. And so if you don't set this, this will default to SSG, gateway, something along those lines. Depends on which form factor you're using. But there's usually some sort of determination. So we like using this service name as the cluster. So if you have multiple clusters, this is a great setting to modify, because now you can see individual clusters, how they're behaving, how they're responding. So if you have 1,000 gateways that are running up and they're all doing individual things, you could theoretically set this with 1,000 different service names, and you'd be all set to go. The OTLP endpoint and protocol are going to be essentially given to you from whatever collector. Again, we're using Elastic, and so you're going to see Elastic stuff in here. But this is something that anyone who's integrating with Elastic or Datadog or Grafana, should be able to find this information. And there's a bunch of resources online. And then finally, I think the most important non-default setting here is this SDK disabled. So it's a little confusing, and this is the OTEL spec. So obviously this isn't something that Broadcom can change, but you'll see some disabled equal false and enabled equal true. So that can be just a little bit of a hurdle. So when you're setting these variables, just make sure you're looking at the actual wording there. And then finally, this is, again, most of these are defaulted to be true anyways, but I wanted to explicitly state them out. We want to be sending metrics and telemetry and any sort of annotations, but most everything else should be good here. And then we come to the cluster-wide properties. This is OTEL.enabled true. This is our metric prefix. We'll see this in action in a little bit. And then service metrics enabled. The trace config, again, this was a previous iteration. We've got some different trace configs now. We'll certainly talk about that with the 11.1.2 updates, because this is going to be definitely helpful. And then tracing enabled. So all of these, both the cluster-wide properties and the system properties, if you set these to the correct values and then perform a gateway restart, because the OTEL.enabled does require a restart, and I believe the service metric enabled does as well. You want to do a gateway restart after doing these just to turn everything on, especially at the system properties. All right, so this was where we left off in September of 2024. That was 11.1.0, I think. There have been some significant changes to the baseline in 11.1.2, and I wanted to talk about how we were solving things before and how we're going to solve them moving forward. So the great part about all of the OpenTelemetry stuff is you have the ability to get a ton of metric information. And I would say a granularity that you could only really get with the API dashboard, with the Policy Manager dashboard. And even then there's some extra stuff that you get in OpenTelemetry that you don't get in the Policy Manager dashboard. Things like latency metrics on every single assertion, regardless if you are specifying that in policy. So it can streamline policies. It can do a lot of additional things because you're not having to worry about expressing those metrics. One of the considerations we were looking for in pre-11.1.2 is how to add context variables into those OTEL, into that OTEL data. So if you think about audits or any sort of debug logs, or the ability to get more information, we call that data enrichment. But the ability to get more information into your OpenTelemetry. So now your OTEL data becomes the source of truth, becomes that gold copy that allows you to see and aggregate and bin and do all the stuff that a good aggregation and visualization framework can do natively. Let's push that capability to that function. And so what we did in the past is two things really. We would update our OTEL trace config to include context variables. And so you can see we had I said we were going to do a slight update to that trace config from the previous slide. And if you update your trace config to include all of the context variables, you are going to get a ton of data. And it's going to be found in your logs. Again, this is Elastic, so you can see up here on the right. You just get all of this information, which is great, except for you're getting it for every single assertion, which is going to bog down your system. It certainly bogged down ours. And it's also going to not become aggregatable. I think I'm going to make that word up. You're not able to aggregate on this data, so you can't search and filter. The logs come in a different format. And so we attempted this. It does give us things that we're looking for, but it gives us more data than we need, and it doesn't solve the problem of being able to enrich the data that we get from OpenTelemetry. So you can use this if you're going pre-11.1.2, but the next slide is going to have, I think, a kind of better and kind of worse solution. The goal here, or the kind of the main issue with this implementation, is you just can't aggregate the data. The second consideration that we attempted was using the telemetry metric assertion to enrich observability. And so this works. You can use the telemetry metric assertion that is now found in, I think, 11.10 to add attributes. This will get sent out through OpenTelemetry. It will come into the labels subsection or subgroup within Elastic, at least. And this works, but it doesn't work at scale. And the reason this doesn't work at scale is because you have there's a fundamental issue with not OpenTelemetry or not Layer7, but the way that we are trying to enrich this data. And so we talk about something called cardinality. That's something you can find on OTEL documentation. It's essentially saying that in order to make this a metric, this all needs to be the same data. So homogeneous data, that's how we increment this counter. And so what you'll end up running into, and we certainly did, is after a certain amount of time, that could be 13 seconds, that could be 13 hours, that could be 24 months, you will start running into issues where your cardinality, or the amount of different data that you are sending through this metric, is over the limit. And the default limit is 2,000. So if you have 2,000 different disparate data sets in here, OpenTelemetry is not going to record any more metrics on this for this name. So you essentially have a data loss at some point, which means your data quality goes away, or at least gets called into question. And what would require this to then restart or refresh that cardinality is a gateway restart. And so again, this is really a use case mismatch. It does work at small levels. We've built dashboards that have used this implementation, and it just becomes a problem at large scale. Great for testing, really poor for production. And again, that's not a Layer7 issue. That's not a OpenTelemetry issue per se. That's just the way that metrics are designed to be handled. So that's the spec, right? And so we went back and forth with my clients, with some of our internal testing, on a way to kind of get the best of both worlds. We wanted the data to be pushed into OpenTelemetry. We didn't want to have the cardinality errors. We wanted to be able to do this at scale. And we were trying to figure out different ways, if there's agents that we could use to push it in, different ways to do this. And thankfully, Layer7 kind of fixed this for us. And so they fixed this through data enrichment on 11.12 to spans, traces, and metrics. And so all of the considerations that we talked about for version 11.11 and behind are now, there's now a capability to enrich this data. So now we don't have to worry about the aggregation loss that we have from sending the logs through the trace attributes. And we don't have to worry about using metric data as discrete data points. So cardinality errors or issues no longer exist. So there's a small update to the existing cluster-wide properties that needs to be set. Nothing in your system properties, nothing in your Helm chart code outside of cluster-wide properties. And so setting this OTEL trace attributes, in this case, because we are going to enrich traces, we set this to status codes, requester IPs. We're essentially going to replicate everything we saw in this OTEL attributes in our telemetry metric assertion. We can now express that here. Now, the big change behind the scenes is that this information before would cause errors if they were null values. So if there wasn't a value for any of these, you would have issues. And so now this is able to be null values and sent to OpenTelemetry all the same. And so I did want to flash a quick page. This is the 11.1.1 configuring custom attributes for traces, spans, and metrics. Again, this is a preview, but it's available in 11.1.2. So certainly, talk to whomever you need to talk to. I think previews, not necessarily production approved, but there's certainly a path forward, and this is something that we are using. And so again, not setting template strict mode to true, but then also having some of those extra settings in our configuration. So I will go back to the slide real quick, just so everyone can see what's going on here. Before we get into a live demonstration of this and kind of see how it works in the wild, are there any questions on anything we've talked about so far?
There is a question in the pin.
Okay. Is that
There's on enabling OTEL, what's the impact on API gateway performance? OTEL.
Great question. Yes. So I would say it's minimal. It kind of gets sent into overhead. The reason why I say that is you're looking at probably a 1 to 2% increase, but that obviously depends on your implementation. All of the OTEL data is batched, so it's not considered real time. I would say it's near real time. So within probably 20-30 seconds, you're going to have a batch sent out to Elastic, which is then going to show all that data for you. So I'd say the resources overhead is probably minimal. Again, that's based on your implementation. If you like to run your CPU utilization around 80-90%, you may see some latency. I'm not sure. We tend to run ours right around 30%, 20 to 30%, just to handle any sort of surges in traffic that we might have. So I would say minimal. We did also see some overhead to certain routing assertions. So routing assertions and some other assertions as well will include some additional headers. And so there are some HTTP headers that get sent, which can be removed. It just means you won't get as much data for that specific assertion. So I would say, again, minimal overhead, something to look at, certainly. I mean, it is a preview capability. So it's something to assess in probably a development or test environment before you bring up to a higher, more fidelity environment. But yes, that's something that we were certainly looking at as well.
I have just one quick comment about the preview. I believe that Broadcom will support anybody that wants to use any preview capabilities, as long as you raise a ticket and let Broadcom know that you want to do that, and then they will support you in that. So you can use that in production, supported, but obviously it's watched. That's all.
Yep.
No worries. Thank you.
One more question. Can you toggle OTEL on and off?
Yes and no. So let's go back to let's go back to slide 5. So where we've got the properties and the system properties and the cluster-wide properties. So enabling or disabling OTEL from a gateway at the gateway level in the cluster-wide properties does require a restart. So you can toggle on and off. It just requires a little bit more work. So that's really the main consideration. What you can do is you can always turn OTEL on, and then either remove or modify your trace config to essentially not send anything through. You will get less data. I don't know if you'll get 0 data, but you should get a little bit less. But yeah, it is primarily required to do a gateway restart just because it's turning on some additional settings that are at the server level. That's a good question. Anything else? These are really good. Okay. Okay. So moving forward, I will just
sorry to interrupt, John. There's yet another.
Oh,
Okay,
good.
since we that's all right. We tested it out in cluster, and after a while, 2 hours, we got duplicates in our trace IDs, completely different APIs. Has anyone had a similar experience?
Interesting. Trace ID should be pretty unique. There is it's a combination of the OTEL ID and the trace ID. I haven't had a similar experience, but that's something I'd certainly like to dive a little deeper on.
Are we sure that maybe the data isn't coming through from two different paths, like one OpenTelemetry and one via, another method of sending metrics?
Yeah,
Like,
and that could be if you're doing if you're running maybe another agent on top that's also correlating at the same time you're sending logs that are going to correlate. But this is after 2 hours. That's interesting.
And it's Michael speaking. It's really reproducible in every test case on our side, and we have no clue how this can happen. But if no one of you guys had the same experience, then I don't want to bother the webinar right now. But it's really strange, and it's blocking since since 2 months. We tried it out, and we cannot roll this out in production just because of that reason.
Sure.
Yeah, that seems odd. This is Ben. I'm the Layer7 API Gateway Product Manager. I'd say open a support case. That's something we'd like to look into.
Yeah, we did, but really the answer was kind of, have you updated your computer? And I tried to explain again what we are doing and that it's a previous version, but with the support was no help.
Michael, it's Robert here. Ben,
Oh, hi, Robert.
I've been working. Sorry, yeah, I caught somewhere else. Sorry for joining very, very late. But yeah, Ben, I think I've got some additional data. I've got all the logs from SPAR. I've got access. So I would really appreciate working with you on this because I've been trying to figure out what's going on. I can't see it. In the process, I've also discovered that there are potentially some issues with the way that the routing assertion creates its spans. I've got some orphan spans in there that are clearly coming from a policy, and they appear to have a unique trace ID and an empty parent span. So that's also in the SPAR stuff. So that there's something not quite right there, I think.
Yeah, why don't you, and Robert, you got my contact information, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Why don't you just send me an email with additional details directly, include the case number that you opened, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, this is the problem, Ben. I can't open a case. I tried to open a case because it's SPAR, it goes through Arrow. Arrow says this is a preview feature. We don't support that and we don't do the cases. So it's a bit of a pest.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, it's okay. We'll take a look at it. I will say too, and John, maybe you've had this experience. The gateway does things one way using just the SDK. We allow you to configure an optional OpenTelemetry agent to work together with your gateway to instrument more of the gateway's tech stack, including all the way down to the JVM and operating system levels. That can often inject additional spans in your traces that are coming from the agent, not the gateway, and that can confuse things. But whatever. It sounds like you might have multiple different problems going on. Let's see if we can't get them sorted for you. Just send me an email directly, Rob. Looks like you had a couple more questions come in, John.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's one. By any chance, did we disable OTEL configuration and see if the trace ID are getting duplicated?
I think that's probably talking to the.
Yeah. It's not really for you, I don't think.
Yeah, that's that'll be a fun one. I'm interested to hear that too.
All right, maybe back to you, John, if you want to continue.
Yeah, we're caught up. Yeah.
You're good. And then, right, so we're going to go into a live demo to kind of see some of the updates. Again, contact information if anyone needs to get a hold of me. And without further ado, let's, here we are. All right, so we've kind of shown APM. This is our Elastic implementation, and we've got the ability to request things from this gateway. This is our, let's do a quick recap, I guess. So this is, so we've got two gateways that are sending observability to this particular Elastic cluster. The one we're going to be talking about today is our cluster deployment. When we were looking at OTEL configs earlier, this would be the otel.service.name. And so you can see we can have multiple clusters running simultaneously, sending information. And then very easily, very quickly, you can see average latency over a period of time. We're set to 15 minutes. We can get the throughput. We can get just these little quick flash charts that show you if you've got issues, where you've got issues, and where those issues may be occurring. So if this is anyone's first dive into APM, we'll just do a real brief overview. We'll expand this a little bit so we have a little bit more information. And so we can see that over the last, here we go, 15 weeks, moderate, minor usage on the gateway in terms of latency. We'll talk about anomalies in a second here. That's an Elastic specific thing. But then we can also look at throughput very quickly. And then it gives us the ability to look at transactions. So these are going to be your endpoints, your service endpoints, your APIs that people are hitting. So this is the name as it appears in the gateway through the policy manager. We can see all of this information coming through. So we see we've got Graphman enabled. Catch-all is really what we're going to be looking at. And so we can come in here. Our catch-all endpoints, I think this is mostly considered best practice now, but this essentially is a wildcard on anything that is not otherwise given a policy through the gateway. This allows us to fail gracefully and also provide some, common 404 information. So again, we'll look at anomalies. Anomalies is essentially an Elastic capability that we've got enabled. It allows us to see if any combination or any metric on latency or failures would therefore create a change in the baseline. So over a long period of time, if we're not used to having an error, if we come in and have an error, we can see we've gone from 0 to 26%. That triggers an anomaly. So as we have issues within there, this allows us to very quickly look in and see what might be going on. So again, Elastic dependent. That's not a base OTEL capability. But the one thing that we've certainly been able to utilize heavily is the latency distribution. So it's over that span. How are your policies handling the time it takes to run things? So if you're going to have timeouts that are going to be failures, we'll see failures. They'll show up towards the right side. If you've got things or maybe authentication issues, they're going to show up on the left side because those are typically the first things you're looking at. It's going to incur the least amount of time in your policy. So again, this is something similar to what you would see in a dashboard, except for it would be expressed as a time function or a histogram as opposed to a function of latency overall. So we use this quite heavily when we're looking at trends in our latency. Now here's the part that I just think is the coolest part of OpenTelemetry, is we have the ability to legitimately look inside our policy at the actual physical assertions that are being generated, whether they are encapsulated assertions like this one is, or whether they are within the within folders with folder assertions. But you not only get to see the entire policy, you also get to see the latency. This is something that you get without having to look at or reference the assertion latency MS. This is just something that is given to you from OpenTelemetry. Super cool. And this is the data that we really want to enrich, is this trace information. So remember before, when we were looking at the tracing capability to put all the context variables in, we now don't see that at all. We're getting legitimate logging from our, in this case, Kubernetes cluster. We're able to see all this information. We can see the OTEL ID and the, where's these? It's just the OTEL ID and the request ID. There it is. So we have that information. And what we were looking for is this client IP, which would be great, except for, again, we can't aggregate on these logs. So now enriching all of that information that we had before is now sent to us through the metadata. Now before, with 11.11, we wouldn't see it here. It wouldn't be associated because it was kind of a separate function. So we could still find it within our Elastic Stack or Elasticsearch, but it wasn't sent in the trace. So now with 11.12, this becomes the one-stop shop where you can look at a specific request. This is just one request that came in 4 minutes ago. They came from 71.218.233.70. CenturyLink comms. There's the relative lat long of this. If we have any sort of threats, if they're using a proxy, it gives us all this information. And then we still have our geo points, so we can map this and plot this as we need to. So this is really the enrichment that I can speak for myself that I was looking for when we initially heard about OpenTelemetry. This really completes that thought. And the really nice part about expressing it still within this labels is our API Insights dashboard that we showed off in September. Now automatically updates with all this information. And so we can come in and look at our success rates, look at our methods, logging status, just like we had before. But now we also get to see the information plotted as a geolocation. And so we can still come in, filter as we need to by country codes that are hitting our APIs. But now we're seeing all of this information expressed as data enrichment, as opposed to a metric use case modification. So this is, again, 11.12 really enables the ability to express more information through that OpenTelemetry. So this is about as much time as I had allocated for our slides and demos. I'm certainly happy to go through different information with anyone, or even try some stuff out, but I certainly wanted to open the floor for any additional questions.
I am not seeing any new ones in the panel, just so you know. And just as a reminder, everyone, you can just take yourself off mute and ask questions directly.
What is this tool, Elastic, John?
Mhm.
What is this Elastic tool? Is it a cloud or any monitoring tool?
So Elastic is started off as a data aggregation service. So if you've ever heard of Elk Stack, that's Elastic, Logstash, and Kibana. This would be Kibana. Several years ago, they just kind of rebranded into Elastic. But yeah, the whole concept of Elastic is a data aggregation. So it's going to be similar to Grafana, similar to other bits of visualization or frameworks similar to that. So and so this is just one of the potential collectors and visualizers that you can use. So there's a number of them out there that are all kind of doing something similar. We chose Elastic because they have a cloud deployment that works well with our AWS. And so with one click, I can monitor not only the APIs that are coming through, I can also monitor the cluster as well. So it's a one-click managed deployment that goes into my corporate AWS infrastructure, and then I can just use it. So ease of getting up to speed was why I chose this.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
There's a massive list of all OpenTelemetry enabled and capable services and applications. One that we're using is New Relic, which is quite good, but that's obviously not an open source. That's something that is, well, it can be open source at a certain point, but you've got a free tier that you could use to test it very easily.
Yeah, there's going to be a bunch, and just as many visualization frameworks that support OpenTelemetry. There are just as many agents or collectors that you can use to then get all the data, and then you can run it with any visualization framework. The collector is really the brains of the operation. After that, it's a function of how to express or visualize that data.
Yeah, it's worth having a look at the collectors, particularly if you've got some security requirements or other financial stuff that you need to deal with, because some of the logs and data that comes out of OpenTelemetry is fairly comprehensive. So you do need to have a look at what actually hits your observability platform to make sure it's compliant with all the various privacy standards and the like. Yes.
Yeah, very, very good point. There's a whole section on filtering, not having as much data as you possibly can, especially in the financial and government sectors.
But on the flip side, for testing, you can actually get away without a collector and go to some resources direct to your, to your application. As I say, I've done that with New Relic. They allow OpenTelemetry direct in just for testing purposes, just a proof of concept.
Sure. Yeah. Different frameworks, different distributions will have different capabilities. We ran into Elastic has their own collector built in, or at least into this infrastructure. Part of the APM framework that they've got has a OpenTelemetry collector built in, but not all frameworks do. So we saw things where I don't want to say other names, but some other platforms require an external agent, require a collector to be deployed, and then you have to work with that integration as well. So.
Hello. I want to ask a question about the data generation part, like layer 7 gateway side. Previously, we aware of the method of the tracing, like we have a chance to enable traces and have some XML logs in the log details, for example. This time we have the OpenTelemetry functionality. I would like to ask about the main difference, like the main benefits of using OpenTelemetry versus old method.
Sure. So I would say the main benefits of OpenTelemetry are there's kind of three real ones that I see, specifically for the Layer7 case. So we look at if you compare the policy manager to what a OpenTelemetry framework or a visualization framework can get you, the ability to very quickly and very easily see the high level, how your entire gateway is doing. So we can see our entire gateway deployment averaging 1400 milliseconds latency, 17.8 transactions per minute. We have the ability to see a very high level and then very quickly dive down into very low level, look at a specific policy, and now we can look at a specific transaction, if that trace was being shown, I guess. So that's one that I think is extremely powerful. The second one is, we'll just go into catch-all and we'll definitely have something there. The ability to see all of your assertions and your latency. So when you're looking at the service debugger in the dashboard, in the policy manager, for example, that shows you real-time stuff. The policy manager dashboard, if you are storing logs and audits and things like that, that can show you a historical view, but that won't show you the granularity that you get here. I can tell you without a doubt that this is within the last 15 weeks. So what was this? 6 seconds ago, we'll go to, so 6 seconds ago, I can tell you every single assertion that was hit. I can tell you every single, or how long it took in latency, which is something that you cannot get easily from the existing policy manager or even the database. And then I can come in and look at metadata for each type or for each assertion, which again, when we were talking about enriching data, you can enrich data on the span as well. So now you can figure out if a user hit this at a certain point, or we can enrich the span with the IP address that was being requested, or even the request URL for a routing assertion. So you can enrich data that way. But having all the metadata and associated logs at your fingertips for any specific transaction, instead of having to look through however big your log file is, becomes extremely powerful. So that's the second one. I would say the third one, especially with the data enrichment now, is being able to use this as an additional source of truth. So rather than having to give people access to the policy manager, which is always, at least I've always seen it as more of an administrative, maintenance tool to go in and not only view your policies but edit policies, things like that, or even the portal, which does similar things but at a more UI level. You can use this as your view only. So now anyone who has access to this cluster, who has access to this dashboard, can now view everything that's going on without being able to modify anything. So this OpenTelemetry not only increases your observability and your monitoring capability, it also increases your security. Because now we have fewer people that are going to have access to our policy manager, and they can have access to this instead. And then this can become a very granular look, both fine grain and high level, on what types of data to show or to not show. So this, it becomes another layer. So we use it, again, both as a monitoring and observability, but also as a security tool. I think that was 3. There might have been a 4th one in there too.
We did have another question come in the panel.
Okay.
Can you use it to collect the request and response, to collect the request and response as well, or is this more for use case of collecting service metadata, trace ID, client IP, etc.?
So my use case for this is to get information about where users are coming from and what they're trying to do. So in this case, our dashboard is tracking geolocations. We do pull the URLs, but we use this as more of a threat vector analysis on who's coming in, what they're trying to do, to a relatively non-marketed gateway. What we were talking about with the data enrichment is you can do whatever you want now. So you could store requests, you could store responses, and instead of, in fact, let's see if I can break open a policy manager right now, and we can just show you. Let's log in.
While John does that, I'll say it does not save request and response messages by default. You could access the message part of those through a context variable and add that using some of the mechanisms John said, but it probably doesn't lend itself to that as much as the second use case, collecting metadata in the form of metrics, traces, and logs. When you're dealing with request response messages, you're dealing with some of the concerns somebody else mentioned on the call, the privacy of the data, how sensitive are the contents of those requests messages, but also message sizes. Some of our customers are pushing really large messages through, and that's not going to scale well on a per API call basis with OpenTelemetry. John, go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what I was going to say. It depends on what you're sending and how much you're sending. This is all dependent on what's going on. Right. So in our trace attributes, we've got right. So we're sending response HTTP status, and so this is going to be the easy thing. Like Ben mentioned, it would be easy to just change this to. Response.main part. And so that is entirely up to you what your infrastructure can handle. Like Ben said, if you have large response messages, then that could cause an issue just on the latency side. So you'd want to pair that or figure out what data is necessary for you and for your specific use case. But yes, this can be customized to send any bit of information. We're just choosing to send small metrics. Essentially, we got rid of this telemetry metric, so it can do what it's designed to do, which is send metrics on more discrete data, not a large collection of information that we're not really doing metrics with.
There are length limitations too, just built into OpenTelemetry. They're often configurable, but they're relatively low, and that would impact everything from the gateway all the way to the back end, right?
You're right.
Not really.
At that point, I have another question, about the request main part and the response main part messages, which might be a little bit longer. For example, with the message completed internal policy, these can be logged, but this is not a good option to have the payloads written in the logs. Instead, internal audit sync policy must be used. This is my information currently, I can say. But what about with the OTEL trace attributes? If we put the payloads inside the OpenTelemetry, to which one is does it mean that we make the logging similar to internal audit sync policy or message completed?
Again, that's kind of what we talked about. We've been talking about that is something you could do, but with real limits, both in message size as controlled by OpenTelemetry attribute length limits, but also scale, because sending that much more data using OpenTelemetry is going to have an impact somewhat on the gateway, but also the entire OpenTelemetry stack, right? The collector, the back end.
A lot to process. Yeah,
Yeah,
so if we're doing.
Stop trying to break it, okay? Just stop trying to break it, Miss Lou.
It's important to respond.
Yeah, I can ask some more questions, but yeah, for now it's enough. Thank you.
Just looked like, Sebastian, you had a question about the timeline data in OpenTelemetry. And maybe that's just how you're presenting it, John, in your dashboards. A lot of that, I mean, so a lot of the metrics traces, you know, logs, you know, are time stamped, right? And a lot of that presenting it in a timeline is just down to how the back end OpenTelemetry compatible solutions present any information in a timeline, right? So the OpenTelemetry metadata includes the timestamps. The backend knows how to take that, present that in a timeline. We do provide some examples of using the gateway with OpenTelemetry with the ELK stack, with the Grafana LGTM stack that we can point users to. John's been showing you using it with ELK. So there are some pre-built dashboards that come with those examples, but you're sort of on your own for building the dashboard that presents the information in the way you want it to. And John's done a lot of customization to build his dashboards in the way he wanted to. So,
right, and this is out of the box elastic. Most anything that has an APM service will have something that's going to look similar. Like Ben said, the data's there. It's just how the framework expresses that. But then this dashboard is obviously something that we've created custom for our use case. But I mean, most visualization frameworks will have some sort of visualization creator that allows you to see in real time the data and how you're changing things. So
no, it wasn't really the question how to represent it visually, but more what do you need to do it in the layer 7 configuration to produce this kind of data, because you need from every searching, you need the data, how much time it consumes.
So that's the nice part about OpenTelemetry is it's normally you would have to run multiple, you know, get the assertion latencies for each assertion, which can cause issues with any sort of logic that you've got in your structure, in your policy. This, you know, let's bring that in. We'll go into a catch-all so we can show the policy and the associated latency. So where you see 7.1 milliseconds here, this is all done as a function of OpenTelemetry. So there's no additional configuration outside of setting your cluster-wide properties and your system properties, whether that's in file system or in your Helm config. But there's literally it's the all the configuration that we showed in the PowerPoint presentation. It's done for you, which
so it's really out of the box. That's
really out of the box.
Surprise.
There's
fully agree with John on this one. In fact, if you want to reduce the amount of data that comes out, it's a little bit more challenging. So you get a lot by default, practically.
Yeah, and it's a granularity that you just don't necessarily get from the dashboard, and that's, you know, probably, I don't know where that went, but since we're running in a container environment, that's not going to happen anyways. But that's something that we wouldn't normally get with our normal dashboarding requirements or dashboarding capabilities. So I see it as a multiplier on top of the dashboard. I can see more information quicker with fewer clicks.
Yeah. Fascinating.
I have to say the dashboard.
And just a reminder, we're out of time, I believe. Probably need to wrap it up for folks.
great job, John. Thank you.
Well,
Yes, thank you.
I love the
Thank you everyone for joining.
present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great rest of your day.
Everyone else, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.